Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Bigger Bite, where we take a deeper dive into some of the biggest films of the year. Once again, I am Matt, your host, and on today's panel, I am joined by the bite-sized ladies themselves, Katie and Paige. How are you girls doing today?
I'm great, thank you.
Paige, how are you doing?
And you know what? I'm hanging in there. It's been a stressful day, but you know what? We're going to talk about defining gravity and finding self-identity and not murdering people, at least yet. So
You're way ahead of yourself here. That's another movie away. But no, we are talking about Wicked today. And I'm actually excited for this because I probably have one of the strangest relationships with this show / movie compared to a lot of other people, where I was dreading going into this personally because I hate the stage show. I still hate the stage show. However, this was my number one movie of last year. So it is a weird relationship to have. And I'm going to start off with Katie. Katie, what were your thoughts on Wicked?
I was in like kind of a similar boat to you. I was like resistant to the charm initially, but yeah, it completely charmed me. I really enjoyed it. It flew by compared to like everything I expected going into it. I loved Ariana Grande, and I'm not a fan, and I didn't expect that. The leads were just incredible. I enjoyed it far more than I thought I would, which is why I think I've got such a high opinion of it.
Before I go to Paige, you were resistant to the charm of it. Why were you resistant?
It's like, I think it just felt so high. I saw the stage show when I was like 13. I don't have a massive memory of it, but it just seemed so commercialized, and the marketing, and there was just this onslaught of stuff about it. So I'm going in, I love musicals, but I heard some things I wasn't too sure, but no. Yeah, it was great.
Paige, your thoughts on Wicked?
So it's interesting because I'm like the complete opposite. So I'm a non-musical fan at all. Not a fan of musicals. Never have been, probably never will be. But I have seen the stage play. And I saw that probably like 5 years ago or so. And I would say like the stage play like brings a lot of life to it. And as someone that's not a musical person, I really dug it. I think it was because of like the live performance of it all. And like the fact when you think about it, when you're watching a play, it's you have this one chance to get what you're trying to do across. Like there's no cut and action in between. So I found that like very like liberating watching like the screenplay. I mean the stage play. So going into the movie, I was like, you know what? Not a fan of musicals, but I'm gonna give this a chance because I really dug the stage play. And I've got to say, well, I could go back and forth on how I truly feel about it. Overall, I was really pleased with what we got. And John M. Chu just shows that man should just stick with musicals, I guess, because that's his cup of tea. And yeah, I mean, this movie actually like defied my gravity of expectations of what I thought it could be, because I didn't really have high hopes for it. Because kind of like Katie said, like I thought it was probably going to just be like this more of a mainstream like fail, and look who we are now. It has a bunch of Oscar nominations and it's nominated for Best Picture. So
there's one thing you said in your statement there that I've been echoing since I left that theater, and that is when it comes to musicals, give John M. Chu a blank check, because In the Heights was fantastic, and this was equally as fantastic.
And Step Up too, even though it's not a musical, but it's like a dance.
We don't talk about his past. We don't talk about his past. If we talk about his past, we get on G.I. Joe Retaliation. No one wants to talk about his past. But he and Steven Spielberg over the last few years have honestly redefined the musical in film. Looking at Spielberg with West Side Story, and John M. Chu with Wicked and In the Heights, and hopefully Wicked Part 2, or Wicked, or For Good as it has now been dubbed. Katie, you mentioned going into it not being a big Ariana Grande fan. Why weren't you a big Ariana Grande fan? What was it about?
I don't want to sound like a hater. It's not that I wasn't a fan as such. I just genuinely wasn't super into her music, which is fine. And I knew her only from like her Disney show. And this is going to sound really like internal misogyny, but I didn't take her super seriously. She was like, she blew me away. She was incredible, and I feel bad about it, and that's why I'm admitting to it, because I was wrong.
So I was curious because I know you're in that right age range that grew up with her Nickelodeon and Disney shows.
Yeah.
So I when you're like, I wasn't really a fan of her, I was like, huh, interesting. Let's dig in on that a little bit. And that's, I have a brother who's 9 years younger than me, so like he was watching that stuff growing up. And while I was not a fan of her casting because I immediately looked, I'm like, all she did was Dan Schneider Nickelodeon shows. Like this is who we have as your Glinda. Okay, I will say, like you said, just absolutely, utterly blown away. She deserved that best supporting actress nom, and honestly, I'd argue she should win it. I got to pull up that list again. Yeah, I mean, there's Monica Barbaro, Felicity Jones, Isabella Rossellini, and Zoe Saldana. Zoe Saldana is category fraud, personally, because I find her to be the lead of Amelia Perez.
I agree, yeah.
I agree as well.
But if Zoe wasn't in this category, I feel like this would be one of the tightest Best Supporting Actress races we had in a while. Paige, what were your thoughts on Ariana Grande?
It's interesting. Yeah, I honestly, like, when she was first announced, I was like, this has to be like a cash grab. Like, I'm like, I've never seen her act before. Like, yeah, the woman has pipes. Like, girl can sing like there's no other. She has a beautiful voice. But I was like, did she have to even like audition? Like, are they just giving it to her because she's a name? Like, did she really prove herself? Like, because obviously the stage play is so beloved that I just didn't want her name to take away from what that story like means to so many different people. And then, like, obviously she's done a bunch of like talk shows, and she's been on like Jimmy Fallon and like all these late night shows and stuff. And when she's on there, she is fucking hilarious. So I was like, okay, maybe I will give this girl like a chance, like see what she can do. And honestly, yeah, to me, she stole the show. She was the best part of the whole movie, and I was incredibly impressed. Do I think? Yes, I think she is so worthy of this nomination for being Best Supporting Actress. I do think it's too soon to just be like, give her flowers, because it's only been her like one major film role. But I mean, she deserves like the honor that she's receiving right now. She stole the show. I thought she was the best part of the whole movie, and going into it, that was literally the last thing I thought was going to happen. So,
well, you bring up her just in general, Wicked fans' reverence for that role in the show in general. She's gone on record talking about how that was one of the shows that made her want to get into show business. She stood by the stage door as a young girl to meet Kristen Chenoweth after seeing it on Broadway, things like that. And it's just like, you can see how much love and care she puts into this role.
Yeah. Yeah. And after hearing all of that from her and stuff, like, you can tell that she's not just like talking out of her ass. Like, she generally like meant that, like, she cared so much. So like after the movie coming out and like seeing her talk about it, like, you can see the sincerity like in her like face, voice, everything when she's talking about it. And yeah.
Well, she's only one half of the crew that is Wicked. Yeah. The other, more important half, in my opinion, is Cynthia Erivo, who plays Elphaba. Paige, I'll start off with you. Your thoughts on Cynthia's performance?
I mean, yeah, this woman can sing and act and probably can do so much more. Like, and it was interesting because like a lot of people don't realize that like she is really short. She is older than she presents. So I didn't know if some people would have an issue like, oh, she's closer to 40, like, but like they're kind of in college. Like, is that going to affect anyone? But no, I mean, I thought she was amazing. I do think Ariana Grande, like, stands over her, and she's casting the shadows kind of her. But I think that's like, I don't want to say like that's like the point of part one, but like that is the character for Cynthia. Like, she is kind of someone that's always cast in the background. Like, and to see her, I can't wait to see what she does in part two, because that's where she's going to get the forefront to kind of stand and do so much more. But yeah, no, I thought Cynthia was fantastic. I mean, She did what she was exactly supposed to do. And I honestly thought it was brilliant that they did cast a Black woman in this role, because what the film, like what the story is like saying about like finding self-acceptance and
Being othered.
yeah, and being who you are and kind of just not, I don't know, like the equality too is like such a big part of it, and
Yes,
just
it
like
is.
loving yourself and the reality that we live in today. Like it actually was refreshing to have a Black woman stand in this role and to show like this is what people are dealing with today. And so it was very relatable to have her in the role, and I was very pleased with what she was able to give us.
Katie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what you said, Paige. I thought she was amazing. And it's interesting you mentioned that thing about her age, because that didn't even cross my mind until you mentioned. I had never.
Black don't crack.
Until,
It's very true. I can't say that though. You can.
Never crossed my mind. But that's probably a testament to just like, that wasn't an issue for me because she was so good in the role. Her voice is obviously just insane. It made me just want to like look at more stuff she had done just to be able to hear her voice more. But her acting's incredible as well, and her like acting whilst singing was so incredible. Her eyes are so expressive, and I think she was so good at bringing out all of those themes about like power imbalances and people being ostracized and all of those things. She was just she brought a really genuinely like emotional and authentic kind of part to the role. So I loved her, and I thought that she was great alongside Ariana Grande as well, who is such presence that she brought exactly what she needed to for her character. So it made sense.
Yeah, they really do balance each other out.
They do.
Like in it.
And this is her second. She was nominated for Best Actress. This is her second nomination. She was originally nominated for Harriet. So her body of work is already speaks for itself, for lack of a better term. But let's get to why people really dig into musicals. We'll take a break from the talking about the cast and whatnot, but let's talk about why people go to musicals, and that is for the story and the music. And right now, I want to focus on the music. I said before, I did not like the stage show at all. In the stage show, there's only 2 songs that stuck out to me in both acts, and that scares me when I go into Act 2. And that is Defying Gravity, which is, of course, the show-stopping number everyone remembers, and Dancing Through Life, which in this I thought was equally show-stopping. My jaw was on the ground. I'm laughing, having a good time, and Jonathan Bailey, oh, that man was just killing it. Just the way he's able to capture the audience, whether it be male or female, for in that song, it was just awesome. And dude has such a charisma. But that song to me is my favorite song from the show, and I was just like, all right, he nailed it. He nailed it. Yep. Just keep going. I'm going to start with Katie here. What was your favorite song from the film?
Popular. Is it called Popular? Is
yes,
that just
yes, it is.
Oh my god,
that's mine too, Katie. That
was so good. Ariana Grande's like the song. I just really like it anyway. But I loved how they did it, and Ariana Grande, like her physical comedy throughout that song was. She's like a Disney princess, but also doing like 1920s Hollywood physical acting. Like it's so good. It was so good. I loved it. All the choreography. Her voice is just insane. That was my favorite one. I thought it was such a feel good like moment and like a break in the emotional tension, and for those characters to get to know each other and kind of like fall in love in that platonic way, like become best friends. Yeah, loved it.
Paige, your thoughts on Popular, since you already said it's your favorite?
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly what Katie just said. Like the film, what Ariana is able to do with like the comedic, like physical comedy in it, it just like puts a smile on your face. But I gotta say, like the other one, obviously, like let's hold space for it, guys, is Defying Gravity. Like that is the song of the movie that will hit you to your core. And of course, it's the song that ends part 1 for all of us. And literally how that was shot, and the fact that they sang in this film live, I think just makes the musical aspect so much more like powerful, that you know that they're doing this in the moment. and not doing it in playback is just breathtaking.
We'll say they did it much better than previous Universal films that attempted to do that in Les Mis and Cats. But I going to the story, what were your thoughts initially? I'm going to start with Paige here. When they announced they were off the bat, we're doing part 1, part 2. Part 1 is Act 1, part 2 is Act 2. What were you thinking when you heard that?
Well, I was honestly nervous because I was like, all right, part 1's already going to be almost 3 hours, and the stage play is almost 3 hours. So it's like, how are they going to expand this story kind of into 2 parts? And I mean, they found a way to do it, but I will say that, at least my personal thought, while I did quite enjoy the film, I do think the middle of the film is a little muddled with some of the stuff going on it, mainly like the theme, like the storyline with the animals, more or less. I felt like they kind of just like jumbled the ball a little bit. And I think they were just trying to like, all right, we're trying to make this movie like X amount of time. So let's get the time going. I don't know why they extended some things in it longer than necessary, because I don't think the film needed to be almost 3 hours long, considering we were getting a part 2. But yeah, I do have other thoughts, but I don't know if you want me to dive into them right now, or do you want Katie to kind of say some stuff?
Well, before we get to Katie, I'm gonna push back on. I actually did think the runtime was warranted, and where you see a muddled middle storyline with the animals, this is going back to pulling on my issues from the stage play. Mm-hmm. Part of my issue with the stage play is you never get any real moments to breathe. It just is go, 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 go.
Yeah.
So like while it does maybe feel muddled to you, I felt like it's giving you more of some realistic realistic for a fantasy world.
Yeah.
Stakes going on in the film, because okay, that is a major reason as to why she's going to ultimately make this decision to not help the wizard. And let's be honest, and you and I live in the U.S. There's a lot of what's going on in that movie going on right now.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's very timely. So to have you talk about Alphabet being othered earlier, to have the animals who could speak be othered and be blamed for these issues, a la the Jewish people in the Holocaust, or the
immigrants, or just anyone.
Immigrants in the U.S. right now. I was trying to figure out how to go about the immigrant issue, but yes, just those issues. I get why you might say it feels muddled, but I actually enjoyed them giving you more time to breathe with that storyline. Katie, sorry, I had to get that out of the way before I forgot. What were your thoughts on?
Yeah, I initially, when I heard it was part 1 and part 2, I was like, cash grab. Like
100. Well, duh. Yes, they're gonna milk as much as they can, and obviously it was a smart decision.
But that's why I rate this film so highly, because I went in with that mindset and the runtime and part 1 and part 2, but I loved it. I didn't think it dragged. I could have had a bit more. Like when it was over, I was like, I wish I was still here, because it's just it's so fun. I was so like into that world. And like you guys say, all of those, I didn't expect the themes to be so hard hitting, and because I thought it's going to be a bit of like more of a corporate kind of take on the themes that are in the stage show, I didn't expect it to be so blatant. And I thought the animal storyline was like the forefront for me, and the themes with Elphaba being excluded run in tandem with that. So I thought it all made like perfect sense. It was all kind of not tied up at the end, obviously, because it's part 1, but all of those themes are like coming to a head, and it made sense for me.
I guess what I will say with the animal thing, though, it's not that I didn't like it. I really liked it. I felt like we needed more of it. I felt like they didn't give us as much. They were just like, oh, this is going on. And then, oh, they disappeared. And now on to the next thing.
But again, that's also running into the constraints of you're trying to base it off of this stage show and not change from the stage show too much, but giving moments within what happened more time to breathe, like the Elphaba and Fiera moment when they first meet up, or her fixing Dillamont's flowers after that falls over, and after having the animal should be seen, not heard on the board. So I knew I wasn't saying you thought it was bad. Let me make that clear. I didn't agree with it being muddled of it all. Is what all I was getting at. But I do want to talk about something that has been the negative for a lot of people with this, and that was the color grading. Me personally, it didn't bug me as much, and especially when you hear why John M. Chu chose to go with that color grading. It makes sense. For those who don't know, he essentially stated, listen, we could have made it this big, colorful world, but I wanted to make it feel like a lived in real place, not just a fake fantasy land. So I'm going to start.
Yeah, it's
start
not a
off with
fever
Paige.
dream like we think
Yes.
Wizard of Oz is. Yeah.
Yes. So
yeah, I mean,
Kate,
I'm not gonna lie. I do think that is the film was like, and this sounds so bad to say because I thought John M. Chu did a great job, but I do think the two weakest elements of this film are the cinematography and kind of the directing a little bit here and there. Just with like some of the takes and how he uses the camera and stuff like that is what I mean, because I wanted something more theatrical, I guess, more or less. I do think I understand like the color palette that he was using. Like, I don't want this to feel like a fever dream, kind of like how Wizard of Oz. That's why it was so poppy and colorful. But I mean, we are in this fantasy world that I wanted more stuff to pop and shine because, like, I'm not lying. Like, definitely, like the fantastical like set pieces are stunning, and I wanted like more of that. I guess kind of than just it being like this gray wash type of film. I get what he was going for, but I guess I'd be lying about saying I just didn't like it. I wanted more color and more flair for what we got. So I am totally on that side of the agreement that I do think the cinematography was really weak in this film. But yeah.
It's not the cinematography that was called weak; it was the color grading. But Katie, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well,
with the color grading, again, it was an issue I was conscious of going into the film, which I didn't think to be that big of an issue. There were some times where I felt the characters looked quite flat. There was like a particular scene, I think it's The Wizard and I, where
Yes,
she's
that
running
one.
through the field.
Yes.
That was the one moment that it nearly lost me. It really took me out of it because I just couldn't stop thinking about like she just looked so flat, and just this image it didn't look nice. But there was set pieces that were really gorgeous. They made up for it later in the film. I thought the colors were like really lovely and bright. Like, I feel like the comment he made wouldn't have been made if there wasn't that reaction and he had to defend himself for what he was doing, because I thought the colors were nice. It doesn't have to be Wizard of Oz Technicolor for it to look good, and I thought it did. It was just a couple of scenes, but it wasn't a constant thing for me throughout the film.
No, I agree with you 110% there. And it's weird that we live in this day and age where directors now, it seems like, have to defend every little small decision. Paige, I will say, I disagree with you when it came to the cinematography of it all, at least, because that cinematography was very reminiscent to me of a Rocket Man, the Elton John biopic, and that is, in my opinion, one of the best shot films, one of the most imaginative films. That is, that and this are prime examples of what a movie musical should be. I don't want something that is theatrical, like as if it's from the stage. I want to be enveloped in this, in the moments. I want to feel as if I'm with the characters, because if we're going for a more theatrical look and not fantastical, then you're not really giving as much emotion and depth. And at that point, I might as well just go watch it on the stage and not in the theater. You need to be able to make these films stand out in a way that they wouldn't otherwise, because you have to essentially, with every moment, justify the fact that you are a film and not just a filmed version of the stage production.
I mean, everyone is entitled to their opinion, so I'm not going to say you're wrong. But I mean, like, I don't know, compare and contrast. Like, I don't know who the DP on this film was, but like, look at something like Dune, that is a fantastical world, more or less, but it's the way it's shot and the grading in the film is just like very stunning, and it has this very stylistic approach to it, and never felt flat. And I think, like, when Katie said that, like, there is that scene that, like, to me, there are scenes in this film that how they're shot, and that's why I said kind of like I think the weaker elements of the film at some points are the directing style. That the way the scene looks just feels very flat to me, and I just needed, I don't know if there was more lighting or just more something in there. Who am I to say? I'm not a DP. I don't know any of this stuff.
Let me say,
I'm
not talking about the lighting or anything. I'm talking about the camera movements and how the shot is composed with things in the screen. I'm not talking about any of the lighting. I understand people's issues with the color grading and lighting. I just don't have it. That's all. And to answer your question, the cinematographer for this is Alice Brooks, who was also the cinematographer on Tick, Tick, Boom and In the Heights. So
yeah, I have not seen Tick, Tick, Boom.
Oh, it's really good.
Yes. I know. Like I said, guys, I'm not a musical person, so
but it's Lin-Manuel Miranda's directorial debut. Like that alone is a reason to watch it.
And I think that could be another thing, though, is for me, like, I love La La Land, but that's also because I've seen Damien Chazelle, how he just shoots films, like, even if they're not musical elements, the way he's able to, like, have that camera, like, sit or move when people are moving around and stuff like that. And for me, I think it's because I'm not a musical fan that I found myself not, like, I guess the word I'm looking for is not, like, as impressed with the way he shot this film, because I was just like, oh, like, but like I think what he did a good job was bringing everything together, because obviously the stage play is such a high standard to bring this to the big screen, and obviously overall he did a great job. I just do think some of I just wasn't totally impressed with his direction at some points, I guess.
Well, now that we've dove into those topics, I do want to talk about the supporting cast a little bit before we start to wrap up here, because this is a very strong supporting cast. You have Michelle Yeoh, Jonathan Bailey, who I mentioned before, Jeff Goldblum, and Peter Dinklage providing the voice for Dr. Dilliman. I'm going to start with Katie here. What were your thoughts overall, generally, on the supporting cast?
I thought they were brilliant. Particularly Jonathan Bailey. I think that he was like a really perfect cast for that role. He brought kind of like a cartoon prince energy that was perfect, like Disney prince that was perfect for the role. He was so much fun, so charming, but in such a fun way, kind of like cheeky. It was exactly what was needed for that role. Michelle Yeoh, obviously incredible, and Jeff Goldblum was so fun. And I think that role needed that kind of fun, theatrical, kind of like Jeff Goldblum operatic thing that he brings. So that was really, really strong. I really enjoyed it. I don't know, like Ethan Slater was like fine, but
yeah,
I don't know. I don't
know without SpongeBob, I guess, more or less.
He's not the best actor. So that was just, but that's such a cold, right?
Well, there's a reason why, because he's forgettable in this movie, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, you're right there.
Not going to argue against that, because
it's not forgettable to Ariana, but the rest of us, yes.
Woo! We really want to go there, Paige. But yes, Paige, your thoughts on the supporting cast in general?
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Bailey is like definitely, I think, when it comes, because I look at this film kind of, it is a two-hander. It is Ariana and Cynthia Erivo show. But I do like this, and I think the next supporting person is Jonathan Bailey, and I think he shines. I mean, I'm trying to think if I saw him in Fellow Travelers, and I've never watched Bridgerton. I'm trying to think if I've seen him in something else, but I thought he was like great in this. He brings, like Katie said, like this like Disney like animated like Prince Charming vibe to him, and he brings like this very like light, like heartwarming like performance with his character and stuff like that. I will say though, I'm not gonna lie, that I thought I love Michelle Yeoh, by the way. I don't know, I kind of felt like she was miscast a little bit. And I also felt like Jeff Goldblum was just doing like how people say Christopher Walken's just doing Christopher Walken. I kind of thought Jeff Goldblum is just doing like Jeff Goldblum's like kind of high energy, like wonky self a little bit. And I'm trying to think who else like really stands out to me.
I
I mean, the goat. I did like the animal, especially the goat, and I cannot
Peter
think of the
Dinklage.
professor's name.
Dillman, Dr. Dillman.
Yes, I thought he was great. I liked his like what he has to say in it. And I kind of also as well, like there is like this heartwarming moment with Cynthia and Jonathan's characters when they're in the woods like releasing the lion. And that was like kind of like a powerful moment because it kind of brought things like to center just because he is this like charming like guy. Like he has like his own like internal like struggles too in a sense, and I thought he did a really great job of like bringing that to the forefront.
He showed he's much
then,
more
yeah.
than a pretty boy. Essentially, you're getting to see
Exactly, yeah,
he's much
totally.
more than this persona he puts on.
Yep,
It's fair. I feel like nobody's talking about Marissa Bode, who plays Nessa Rose, who she has a more of a part to play in part 2. Like,
yes,
just
yeah,
putting that out there. But the seeds of it in the little bit of time that she has have been sown, and in a very effective and interesting way, considering how she did pull off the schoolgirl who's infatuated with Buck. And for those people who have seen the show or even just have read the book and are familiar with what happens there, it's very interesting to see how she's able to take advantage of this little bit of time she has to really give you something to latch on to, albeit not much, but it's still there with her character. But yes, I get your comment on the Jeff Goldblum playing Jeff Goldblum. However, when it comes to the Wizard, I think that's what you needed.
Yeah, you definitely do. And that's why I can't like hate on it too much, because that is something you definitely need. Like you need that elevated like performance kind of in a sense, because it is this guy, spoiler guys, we are taking a bigger bite into this film, that you do need this guy that like kind of puts on this front that he is this strong magical man, but he's in reality he's a fraud. And I think he plays the fraud really actually well in it, but I just do think he is like playing more just like an upbeat version, like I don't want to say like wonky, but like elevated version of himself, I guess, more or less.
That's fair. But no, I think we've essentially covered everything we need to cover with this film. I before we sign off, what are your hopes and thoughts heading into Wicked for Good, aka Wicked Part 2?
Katie, you want to go first?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to more Ariana and Cynthia. Just that relationship I'm really looking for. I don't know the story super well, even though I've seen the show. It was a really long time ago, but I'm really looking forward to how that relationship develops and how we get to the beginning of part 1. And just seeing more of all these different characters, the relationship with Jonathan Bailey's character, how that's going to be developed, and more of the music. It's a musical. The songs are great. I'm looking forward to the music, and just watching these extremely talented people sing for probably over 2.5 hours will be great.
With new songs, with added new music.
That was something I was definitely going to bring up. Yeah. That's what I'm curious about. Like, I'm curious where they're going to take the second half of the story, because they covered majority of like the stage play in part 1. So
they only covered act 1.
They didn't, but like they can take so much more. They can take more liberties now, I think, in part 2 than they could have in part 1, because like obviously for part 1 you have to bring in like your core audience who love the book or the stage play.
Just the stage play. The book is nothing.
Yeah. So you have to you have to attract those people that already love the story. And so now that you've got those people in and new fans, like I am curious to see the liberty that they will take for part 2, because the story definitely there's much more like lore, I guess. I don't know if it's like lore I want to say, but like it ties into Wizard of Oz like very well.
Lore's the proper word.
What? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I'm really curious to see like the liberties that they take in that. I'm curious with like the new songs. Like I said, I'm not a musical person, but like the first one did it did rope me in enough that yeah, I'm gonna go see it. I saw the stage play because my aunt is a huge Wicked fan, so I took her to see that, and of course I took her to see this movie. Like, I'm gonna take her to see part 2 when it comes out later this year. I do just hope that my like a little nitpick thing I had with part 1 is that I felt some of the musical like the musical numbers occasionally kind of like, I don't want to say like took you out of like or like overpowered like the overall story, because like when like at the end when Defying Gravity hit, like that is the story of like self-acceptance and like freeing yourself and finding like the belief in yourself kind of in a sense. And so yeah, I'm very curious. I think I'm more excited for part 2 than I am part 1, because I kind of knew what to expect with part 1 more or less, like overall story wise. But since they can take so much more liberty in part 2, I'm really curious to see what they do, because shit's gonna people that don't know the story, I think they're gonna be like, oh shit, was not expecting that, or I don't know. I'm excited to see what other people are gonna think with it.
Well, I will agree with you. I do think that like they can take more liberties on part 2, because a lot of people will tell you that is the more forgetful act of the 2 acts. So I will agree with you. I think that's why they're like, hey, we're adding 2 new songs, because there's, to me, I know some people told me 4 Good is just a memorable number. I'm like, is that the finale? I remember part 1 just from when I saw the stage production very well. I remember elements of the story from Act 2, but I don't remember any of the music.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I personally am open and willing to take and see some of these liberties that they may take.
That is open to holding space for part 2, guys.
Yes, but no. But that's it. Those are our thoughts on Wicked. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can check out these lovely ladies over on Bitesize Breakdown, where they do reviews and articles. You can go check out everything they do there, and their Twitters are in the description. But you can check me out here on A Bigger Bite, as well as my personal YouTube channel, What Real Entertainment, where I have an ongoing Superman podcast going on right now leading up to James Gunn's Superman. So be sure to check that out and maybe see a few bite-sized faces along the way. And yeah, but thank you, ladies, for coming in and joining on this conversation. Thank you, those of you who watched. And signing off, I am Matt, that is Katie, and that is Paige. And we will see you next time for A Bigger